Hi, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our second news update of the Beef Brunch educational series. My name is Ashley Edwards, and I'm an assistant extension agent and coordinator of animal science programs in the Central, Northeast, and Northwest regions. With me today are our regional livestock specialists, Jason Holmes in the Northeast region, Lee Falk in the Northwest region, and Vince Desatel in the Central region. If you missed our last update, we are trying to make these bi-weekly reports. They are being filmed in advance to posting them online, so there is some delay in getting them to you. We are hoping that that does not extend into more than a 2-day delay before we have them onto our YouTube channel. We will also do our best to mention the date that it's recorded in the video title. Any links that we mention will also be recorded there below the video in its little description. Vince, will you please start us off with a weather update in Central and South Louisiana?
Sure, Ashley, thank you. Well, fortunately, we've gotten some rain here the last 10 days or so. We've had 2 significant cool fronts come through. The unfortunate thing is for Central Louisiana and South, we're typically very warm this time of the year, moving into mid-May. We're looking at some possible upper 40s tonight, low 50s for sure. With this rain. So today we're getting significant rain with the front coming through. We've had already 1.5 inches or so. Last week we had up to 4 inches, but that dried out in just a matter of a couple of days' time. We had brisk north wind and cool, clear weather. Those areas that didn't get significant amounts of rain were able to harvest some hay and get some good hay put up. Whereas we're taking a lot of ryegrass hay off this time of the year. That's in abundance from the winter feeding period.
Thank you. Lee, do you mind giving us an update in the north?
Thank you, Ashley. Glad to be with everybody for this update. We're dealing in the northern half of the state with kind of the opposite conditions as what Vince has been talking about. We finally got some dry weather, span of about 6 days of dry conditions where producers could really get out and get some hay made. A lot of guys out there still baling baleage, but we really saw kind of a kickoff and a transition into some dry hay being made over the course of this 6 or 7 day dry period. Field conditions continue to be wet. Talked to a lot of producers that are having problems getting over fields, even though we have the dry period where we could get some dry hay made. They just simply couldn't get into some fields, or we're having to be selective on fields that they harvest. We are going to forecast to experience some cool temperatures, as Vince alluded to, up on the northern end of the state as well. When you're looking at the ryegrass and clovers and other winter pastures, winter grasses, we're definitely past the peak on that. These 80-degree days have definitely knocked a hole in some of their production, and we've seen that kind of going on the downhill slide from there. But this dry period was greatly needed to get some of those ryegrass and other winter pastures off the field so that we could get some summer grass growth.
Thank you, sir. And we've started talking hay already today, and we will be for a long time in the future. Vince, do you mind talking a little bit about getting some soil samples from those fields?
Thank you, Ashley. As we start to contemplate getting our hay fields and also pastures ready for some summer grass and growth that normally occurs under normal weather conditions, we've been kind of behind the 8 ball, so to speak, with these cool fronts coming through. Fortunately, we've had a couple of inches of rain, well, up to 4 inches of rain in areas early part of last week, and then again today with this storm coming through. So we're getting the rain, but the unfortunate thing is that we're getting cool, and in some cases cold north wind with expected low 50s and even upper 40s in some areas tonight and tomorrow night. So it's been a real challenge in trying to get some of these summer grasses moving. It's just been too cool, and in some cases too wet. Regarding in preparation for growing these warm summer forages, we're recommending definitely get out there and do some soil sampling, get that pH corrected, make those lime applications where needed. We have a variety of soil types in central and south Louisiana, including a often found hard clay pan that we get really dry and tough soils here that is sometimes often hard to grow grass when we get dry. And drought monitor has us moving into the summer in a droughty pattern. So not cutting corners, but weather's definitely been the underlying factor of getting moving here and looking into the future. We definitely need more seasonable weather, warmer temperatures, and so we could get those fertilizer applications made. We've had some producers make some early fertilizer applications, but we're not seeing much movement on those fields that have been fertilized just due to the weather conditions. It's just been unseasonably cool. We've had a few, it seems like adequate rainfall, but it just dries out like we, in some place other than central and south Louisiana. It's been really nice and cool for us as people, but our cattle pastures and our cattle are also comfortable with it. But our the amount of forage that we can produce has been limited and kind of slow to start, so to speak. Definitely, no corner cutting as far as fertilizer applications. We've got to get those fertilizers out there to make that quality hay that we need to keep that 9, 10, 11% protein hay put up and cured well, so we can have some forages or some hay going into the wintertime. Unfortunately, the last couple of years we haven't had that good quality hay because we've been so wet into the fall and even into the wintertime, and quality has been low. That's about all I have for this area.
All right, thank you. I should have mentioned as we got started, we had a storm pass through this morning, so we're all kind of experiencing a little bit of buffering and delay in some of our videos and audio streams. So as we start looking at hay quality, or we're discussing hay quality, I want to add in a little bit of a note on herd nutrition and start thinking about body condition scores and things like that. So if you still have your bulls out with your cows, again, we want to make sure that they're staying around a body condition score of 5. If they're starting to go down into that 4.5 range, we might want to look at increasing the energy in their diet. So start to make sure you're getting that 55 to 65% TDN, or total digestible nutrients, and you can keep their protein levels around an 8 to 10%. On your cows, if they're lactating right now, and if you're looking at trying to get them bred again, you want to try to keep them around body condition score of 5 and don't really let it get any lower than that. If you look at nutrient requirements for those, if you have cows that are in early lactation and going through this breeding season, you want total digestible nutrients to be somewhere around 60 to 65%. We want that crude protein to be in the 10 to 12% range. And when you move into late lactation and closer to weaning for their current calves, while they're also pregnant, you can lower the TDN just a little bit, but keep it in 55 to 60% range and keep your crude protein in 8 to 10% range. If you have heifers that you're breeding, between breeding season and pregnancy determination, you're looking at them to gain maybe about 1 pound per day, depending on their condition. You want those heifers probably closer to a body condition score of 6 right now, 5 to 6, but TDN being 50 to 55%, and then crude protein around 7 to 9%. As they enter into mid-gestation, looking again at them gaining maybe 1 pound to 1.5 pounds a day, depending on their condition. Keep TDN in the 50 to 55% range, and that crude protein again can stay in the 7 to 9% range. So really for the heifers, as you get them bred, go through pregnancy determination and mid-gestation, you're wanting to keep them in, again, the 50 to 55% range for energy. That's often our limiting factor in our diets, particularly as we go through the summer. So while you're putting up hay, it doesn't hurt to get that tested. Make sure you are planning ahead, planning ahead to make sure you have enough hay, or you're purchasing hay, and be considering what rations you might have to supplement in order to meet these nutrient requirements. Jason, do you mind going into a market overview, please?
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to share my screen here, so if y'all will tell me whenever it's whenever y'all can see this. That way the folks that are watching online, they can have some of this as a narrative. Can y'all see that?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. So just first off, visit a little bit about what's happening now. So there's been a lot of chatter about the different meat protein sectors that are doing some depopulations on farm, poultry industry, pork industry. Very devastating what's happening there with those two industries. Fortunately, we are not having to experience those depopulation efforts in the beef sector, and there's no plans that we've heard about any depopulations taking place on our beef side. In the feedlot sector, they are doing their best to hold some of those market-ready cattle, slowing down the energy levels in those diets to try to slow down whenever they're ready for slaughter. The problem on the slaughter side at the processing plants is they're having a hard time figuring out what capacity is going to be from day to day in terms of how many they can slaughter. So they're just trying to slow down some of those cattle that are market ready now to try to gauge what the slaughter capacity is going to be from day to day. However, whenever we do start slowing down those cattle in the feedlots, that puts some downward pressure onto our cattle that are coming off of grazing pastures right now. There's a lot of cattle coming off of wheat at this time, and there's a backlog there with those cattle that are coming off of grass. I don't know if any of you saw in drovers this week, the Beef Alliance announced that they had drafted a proposal called the Fed Cattle Set Aside Program. This was based off of Canada used a similar type program during the 2004 BSE crisis. And so I encourage you to take a look at that. If you do have cattle that are out there in pens and are going to be ready in the next month or so, this might be a program if it's adopted by USDA. It has been proposed to USDA by the Beef Alliance, so that might be an opportunity to again hold some of those cattle on the maintenance diets in the feedlots for about 75 days. We are still awaiting rules pertaining to the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. Again, if you're not familiar with that, that was a program that was announced by Congress that would provide direct payments to beef cattle producers. That's also the program through which the federal government is buying meat and vegetables and distributing that through food banks, through the military, and through other avenues. But we're still waiting for those rules to come down from Washington. So we'll know what that program is actually going to look like on the producer level. There's been a lot of chatter in the news lately about beef prices in the grocery stores. So we are experiencing some inflated prices. We believe that is going to be definitely for the short term. Again, this is not an overall beef chain shortage. I've had to dispel a few rumors about there's a shortage out there. Well, it's not a shortage on the live side. It's a shortage on the fabricated beef side. So there's definitely not a shortage whenever you get on the live side. But that shortage is causing some short-term inflated prices on the wholesale and retail side of things. So these backups in the feedlots put negative downward pressure on the feeder sector, which is why our prices are depressed on the feeder and calf side of things, while drastically decreased slaughter increases prices on the wholesale and retail side because of shortened supplies. So whenever we get those increased prices, the grocery store manager, their job their goal is to keep shelves stocked. So they're forced to pay those higher prices. We'll look at some prices in just a second in terms of what we're talking about on those choice meat products, but they're forced to pay those higher prices, and those prices are going to get carried on down to the consumer. So moving on into prices, and we'll move through these pretty quick. So Not a whole lot of movement on calf prices. We'll talk futures in just a second, which is where we're seeing the majority of the movement, which is providing a little bit of optimism. But in the short term, at our local markets, we're not seeing just a whole lot of movement. But the good thing is we're not going in a negative direction. We're going in a slightly horizontal direction, which is better than downward. We would love to go upward, but we'll take a little bit of horizontal movement. Oklahoma City 5 and 550 weights, about the same as the Mississippi's. We're running about $1.43, $1.42 for those 500 and 550 weights in Oklahoma City. Mississippi 7 and 8 weights. You'll see a lot of fluctuation there from week to week on those prices. A lot of that has to do with volume. So the Mississippi markets are not showing a lot of volume on those 7 and 8 weights. So you'll see some pretty good fluctuations there from week to week. But as you look at Oklahoma City, again, we're seeing just a little bit of movement up and down from week to week. But overall, we see that movement is pretty much horizontal and hanging out there around the $1.15 range for those 750 to 8 weights. Slaughter cow prices are still good. So slaughter cow prices, since all of this started, you can see there from the early part of April, slaughter cow prices are still up 33%. They've started leveling out just a little bit, but definitely an opportunity for the folks that do have some cull cows that they need to get rid of. That market is definitely pretty optimistic right now for those cull cows. Slaughter steer prices, these are our feds. These are those finished cattle, 5 market weighted average. So this is those 5 markets that are the heavy feedlot areas where they're selling those fed cattle. So you can see that we're still down about 19% overall from whenever all of this started. The shutdown started, so we're still hanging out there in the mid 90s, upper 90s. For those fed cattle. In terms of the futures on those fed cattle, they're up for June, August, and October delivery. August delivery, we actually finally hit $1, and then October delivery, we're a little over $1. So we really start seeing some improvements in that in the futures for those live cattle, those fat cattle, in the first quarter of 2021. But at least we are seeing some improvements in those futures markets in the short term as well. So cattle slaughter, this is what we were talking about a while ago in the narrative at the beginning. So cattle slaughter, again, is down 38% since the pandemic really got cranked up in the states. So you can see that chart. I think that pretty much says it all for what we're looking at for cattle slaughter. And then the story that probably gets told more than any, the one that Department of Justice has launched an investigation into the beef packing industry. That's been widely announced through USDA and other channels as of late. But looking at these prices, and there's rumors coming through some of the marketing channels that these prices for this week, which these prices are based on, you can see the date there, May the 4th. There is rumor that these prices are even closer to $400 a hundredweight for this week ending. I think I just went too far. Nope, that was it. So with that being said, I will turn it back over to Ashley to continue on with the update.
Thank you. And so as we're talking a little bit about slaughter capacity, we've all been visiting, I think, a little bit over the past week or so about the capacity of our local slaughter facilities. Lee, can you touch a little bit on what we have up here in North Louisiana?
Yes, definitely. We'll add in on that, and I'd like to say that a lot of producers like right now are looking at different marketing options. They're seeing these low sale barn prices, kind of what Jason was alluding to in his market report. they're realizing the fact that they're be lucky if they break even on the cattle, or probably lose a little money if you look at their total cow cost for a year. And so they're looking at other options, and one of those options being marketing directly to the consumer. Now, this isn't a new concept. It was a way of doing business for years, and it's kind of seen a resurgence in the last few years, mainly driven by the fact that consumers like the idea of buying local beef. They like to know where their cattle are coming from, how they're raised, how they're handled, and let's not make any bones about it. A fresh steak from Vince's ranch that's been locally grown and fed out locally is going to be top quality, to say the least. And so that leads to the obvious problem of where you're going to get these cattle processed at. Unfortunately, over the last several years, several decades, we've seen a decline in the number of small, locally owned processing plants. They've kind of gone the way of the local sale barn. We've seen a reduction in their numbers, but we still have several around in northern Louisiana, and they all operate just a tad differently. You have some that are selling meat directly out of the plant there. You have some that will only do custom processing, and so on and so forth. But we're talking to a lot of people. I know I can speak for myself, but I feel like I can probably speak for Ashley, Jason, and Vince, who are making inquiries and getting into the custom beef business, either selling whole beefs or halves or quarters, or even breaking them down and selling the individual cuts. And so there's a huge interest in this, putting a lot of stress on our local processing capacity. These little local plants, most of them are not set up for high capacity. They're not set up to process a lot of cattle during the day, and so that's pushing these wait times to get cattle processed out months and months in advance. Before we started recording, Jason and Ash and I were visiting just a minute about some local plants, and it seems like the general trend around here is, if you're trying to get cattle booked for processing, unless you have a brother-in-law or a good buddy in the business, you're looking at into the late summer or fall. August. The plants that I visited with and the managers, they're saying, don't even bring us any cattle till August. We'll get you on the books. August is as soon as possible. I'll wrap it up. Vince may have some more to add to that, but I'll wrap it up by saying this: if you are looking at getting cattle processed, you're looking to go into the custom beef business in one form or fashion, there's several different ways you can do it. I would encourage you to call these local plants. Just because I'm telling you it's wait times of August or so, go on and give them a call and talk to them about options and kind of what you're planning on doing. You might be surprised. You might be able to get to sneak in a little sooner. They may have some slots opening up, and I would highly encourage, if you're trying to get in the custom beef business, to get in contact with one of us. It's a very good business to be in, especially right now, but there are some tricks and some tips and some things that a lot of folks may not even consider when they're talking about carrying their production on past their farm, if they're planning on retaining ownership and kind of holding on to these cattle and marketing the beef. There are some things that they may need to consider. So Vince, you want to add in on that?
Yeah, Lee, and it's basically the same down, central part in southern Louisiana. I can think of 4 processing facilities within a 40-mile distance from my place, and the story is the same there. I mean, every one of those are minimum 60 days backed up on processing. If you got any kind of custom work that you want to have done, we do have one USDA approved plant there in Eunice, and they're at capacity. I talked to their operator this week, and they're buying cattle in the country, what they're considering fat wean calves from producers just like you and I, and they're processing them. We've got a number of producers that are feeding calves at their own places to be sent to some of these processing facilities for marketing. There's been a big push by consumers, people that have gotten away from the farm life, that truly realize that there's good fresh quality. Once they think about their roots some, they're going back to it. I mean, I've had some inquiries, from my cow-calf operation we've got some newly weaned calves, and I've had some inquiries this week about some of those steers. So there's definitely a push for fresh farm-raised beef, and the scare is certainly in the air, so to speak, because the local grocery stores have some gaping holes in their meat cases, and it's definitely scary times. And there is a big push, and some of these local processors are well backed up, and they just can't catch up, so to speak, because there's been such a demand. And I guess we could say that they're trying to hoard and stockpile, to some degree, to make sure that they've got ample food supply moving into the future. So with that being said, it's definitely a push, and there is a need and a for that niche market, for local raised processed beef, but the processing is the issue.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in there on one more thing, Lee. I appreciate that dialogue. That's some good information. I guess I would just like to add that the folks doing this are trying to offset losses that they're incurring through traditional marketing methods. I mean, that's the reason they're out there doing this. They're hustling, just trying to make up some of those losses. And I just want to dispel one other rumor that everybody's hearing, and just try to educate the people who don't quite understand the beef industry, is that our cow-calf guys, our grazers, those folks, y'all, they're not getting rich. These guys are really struggling right now and most of them are probably not even going to cover their costs this year on this calf crop. And just because we see these record high meat prices, that does not trickle down to the cow-calf and the grazer and those folks on that side of the supply chain. So we just need to make sure that we do a good job of educating folks about our that side of the industry, and that they're not getting rich just because of these high meat prices.
All right, thank you all. Do y'all have any other topics you'd like to discuss really quick before I wrap up? I'm going to take that as a no. So I have one more thing that I'd like to add in before we conclude today, and that is that our Beef Brunch educational series webinar is going to be a two-part series this month. So part one will be on May 12th. That's next Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. We will have Dr. Sebe Brown, who is our field crops extension entomologist, and he's going to be discussing management of armyworms and bermudagrass stem maggots in pastures and fields. And then a week later, on May 19th at 10:30, Mr. Jason Holmes is going to be reviewing methods of external parasite control for cattle. So this is a free webinar series. Both of them they are both live events, so you can jump on. You'll have the ability to ask questions in our chat box, so that way we can hopefully educate you as much as possible on both of those topics. I will be linking that information in the little description below this video so that you can access that. We also have it advertised kind of floating around on social media. But if you have any more questions on that or our news updates, please feel free to contact any of us. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that you have a great day.